They call it the death chair, a plain wooden chair. Old, unremarkable. Yet, inside Thoxen Museum, in the heart of a small American town, it sits behind a dusty velvet rope, waiting. I had heard about it from a friend, a local tour guide who swore that no one who sat in that chair lived to tell the story. At first I laughed. It sounded like a cheap tourist attraction. But when I saw the fear in her eyes, my smile faded. The Thoxen Museum itself is unsettling. The building is from the early 1800s, with cracked brick walls and iron gates that moan when pushed open. Every step on the wooden floor creaks as if the house itself breathes under your weight. The chair is displayed in the farthest corner of the main hall. There are no fancy lights on it, no labels explaining its history, only a small wooden sign, hand-carved with one word burned into it: cursed. I walked closer that evening just before the museum closed. The air felt colder there, as if the chair carried its own shadow. The moment I stopped in front of it, I felt watched. The backrest was carved with strange, uneven lines, scratches, deep grooves, like fingernails dragged into the wood. And on the seat, a dark stain, old, almost black. The staff claimed it was varnish, but every local guide whispered a different story. That's the blood of the first man who died on it. According to legend, the chair once belonged to Thomas Grail, a convicted murderer from 1784. He was sentenced to hang, but on the day of his execution, he cursed everyone present. Before they dragged him out, he sat on that very chair and screamed, "Let this seat be my revenge. Let anyone who rests here suffer the death I was promised. None will see another dawn." People thought it was nothing but a madman's words, until the deaths began. The first recorded victim was a guard at the old courthouse, a man named Henry Barlow. He had laughed at the story, sat down on the chair, and drank his whiskey there while mocking the curse. That same night he was found lifeless in his bed, his face pale, mouth open as if he'd died screaming. Then there was Margaret White, a curious traveler who wanted a photograph. She sat on the chair, smiling, while someone snapped her picture. The next day, she drowned mysteriously in a shallow creek, only a few inches deep. People said they saw dark bruises on her arms, like handprints. The museum staff refused to talk about these stories. Some won't even go near the display. One janitor told me, whispering so softly I could barely hear, "At night we hear it, the sound of wood creaking, as if someone's sitting on it. But no one is there." I stayed late that night. Something in me, a mix of fear and fascination, wouldn't let me leave. I waited until the museum grew silent, the heavy front doors locked for the evening. That's when I heard it. A faint tap, like a chair leg shifting slightly on the wooden floor. Then another sound, a low sigh. I froze, my heart pounding. The chair was still there, untouched, but I swear I saw its shadow move. I took out my phone to record. My hand shook as I zoomed in. Through the lens, the chair looked different. Its wood appeared darker, almost wet, and I could swear the scratches on the backrest formed letters, like words trying to crawl out. I blinked. The marks were just scratches again. But the unease remained. The locals believe the chair is alive. Not alive like a person, but alive in the way a curse lingers. Some say the spirit of Thomas Grail never left it. They claim that if you sit on it, you don't just feel cold, you feel him. There's a story about a teenager, Danny Rhodes, who dared to sit for just 10 seconds. They say he laughed nervously, stood up, and left the museum without a scratch. 2 days later, his car skidded off the road for no reason. He didn't survive. Coincidence? Maybe. But around here, no one calls it coincidence. I kept watching the chair, unable to look away. It was just a piece of furniture, but my chest felt heavy. The longer I stared, the more I thought I saw shapes in the wood. Faces. Eyes. One face looked like it was screaming. Another seemed to smirk. I rubbed my eyes and stepped back. The feeling didn't go away. Instead, I felt a wave of dread, thick and suffocating. The museum's closing bell rang earlier, but I stayed hidden. I wanted to know the truth. Was it just an old chair with a story? Or something far worse? The building was dark now, only a few dim lights glowing in the hallway. Every creak of the floor made me jump. I found myself standing just inches away from the chair. That's when I heard the whisper. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. But it was there. A rasping voice, like someone speaking through rotting wood. "Sit down." I staggered back, my breath caught in my throat. No one was there. No one but me. And the chair. I turned to leave. Every instinct told me to run. But my legs felt heavy, as if the whisper had hooked into my mind. They say the first step into darkness is curiosity, and I was already too deep. I reached out. My hand trembled as it hovered over the armrest. The wood felt cold. Not like normal cold, but unnatural, as if it was draining warmth from my skin. Then I felt it. A pulse. A faint heartbeat, coming from the chair. I jerked my hand back and stumbled. The sound of wood creaked behind me, though I hadn't touched it. The chair had moved, just an inch. And in the silence that followed, I knew one thing. This wasn't just a legend. The curse was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Even when I left the museum, I felt its presence. In the corners of my mind, I heard it. A whisper, calling my name. The night after I first heard the whisper, I couldn't stop thinking about the chair. No matter how hard I tried, my mind kept returning to its dark wooden frame. The grooves carved into it, the cold presence that clung to the air around it. I knew I had to find out more. The next morning, I went to the Thoxen Museum again. The front doors were just opening when I arrived, and the old caretaker, Mr. Harris, stood there like a sentinel. His hair was white as snow, and his face looked like it had been carved from the same wood as the floorboards. When I mentioned the chair, his expression darkened. "You shouldn't talk about it," he muttered. "People don't come here for that anymore. Not since the deaths." I pressed him for details. At first he ignored me, but eventually he sighed and said, "You want the story? Fine. But don't come blaming me when you can't sleep after hearing it." He led me to a small office behind the main hall, where shelves of old documents and photographs were stacked like forgotten tombstones. From one of the shelves, he pulled out a thin, yellowed folder. The words on the front were handwritten, barely legible. The Grail Curse. As he began to talk, the world outside seemed to fade. The story started in 1784, in a time when this town wasn't much more than a handful of wooden houses and muddy streets. Thomas Grail was a farmer. At least that's what they called him. But people whispered that he was something more. A man with dark knowledge. A man who consorted with things no one dared name aloud. One winter, when crops failed and people were starving, Thomas was accused of murder. A neighbor had been found dead, his face twisted in terror with no clear cause of death. They blamed Thomas. "They said he killed with a curse," Mr. Harris whispered. "They said he had been talking to the shadows in his barn, and when they came for him, he cursed them all." He was tried in the town square, found guilty in less than an hour. Before they hanged him, they allowed him one last request. A seat. And that was the chair. Handmade from oak, polished but plain. According to the legend, Thomas laughed as he sat on it, his eyes burning with fury. "They can take my life," he told the crowd, "but this seat will remember. This seat will avenge me. Whoever rests on it will feel my death, and death will come for them." The rope was placed around his neck, and as the crowd watched, Thomas spat his final words. Mark me. None who sit will see another dawn. They say that after he died, the chair was left under the gallows for days. When someone finally tried to move it, their hands turned black and swollen, as if burned by fire. I could feel goosebumps crawling up my arms as Harris spoke. He leaned closer, his voice a hoarse whisper. Every time someone dies after sitting on it, that chair, it feels heavier, like it's feeding. I swallowed hard. It was just a story, wasn't it? Later that day, I searched through the old archives in the local library. I found mentions of Thomas Grail in faded newspapers, his name scribbled in ink. There were accounts of his trial, but one detail stood out. Several of the men who carried his body after the hanging died within the same month. No illnesses, no accidents. They simply stopped living. The next page I turned revealed something even stranger. A journal entry from a woman who had been there the day Thomas was executed. Her handwriting was shaky, but her words were clear. When they lifted him, I swear the chair groaned, like it had a voice of its own. I heard him laughing, though his lips did not move. That chair is not wood. It is something else now. I left the library with a knot in my stomach. The deeper I dug into the history, the more I felt like the chair wasn't just an object. It was a vessel, a container for rage, for pain, for something I couldn't name. That night I couldn't sleep again. The sound of whispering seemed to follow me into the darkness of my room. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. I dreamed of Thomas Grail's face, eyes dark, mouth twisted into a smile. The next day, I went back to the museum once more. This time, the hall was almost empty. The chair sat alone, its dark wood gleaming faintly under the weak lights. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. There was something different about it, something I hadn't noticed before. In the carvings on the backrest, I thought I saw new scratches, as if someone, or something, had dragged sharp nails across it overnight. When I looked closer, I saw faint letters forming. It spelled something. My name. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, stepped back, looked again. The scratches were just scratches, no letters. But I knew what I saw. I decided to ask Mr. Harris about it again. When I mentioned what I saw, his face turned pale. "You've been too close," he said sharply. "The more you look at it, the more it sees you. Don't you get it? That's how it works." But it was too late. That night I began hearing something new, a sound like wood creaking. Not from my house, from my dreams. And through it, a voice, a slow, broken whisper. "Sit, or I will come to you." The fear was suffocating. It wasn't just a story anymore. The chair wanted me. I realized I had two choices: either stay away from it forever, or face it. And I already knew I couldn't stay away. The third night was the worst. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The dream had been sharper this time, clearer. The chair was there, not in the museum, but in my bedroom. Its dark wooden frame stood in the corner, its shadow stretching across the floor. And I heard it again. "Sit, or I will come to you." I turned on the light. There was nothing there, just the empty corner of my room. But the fear stayed with me, wrapping around my ribs like a cold chain. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt something watching me. Not someone. Something. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I had to see the chair again. It was madness, I knew that. But if I didn't face it, I was sure the nightmares would never stop. When I got to the Thoxen Museum, the doors were already open. A young woman was standing at the front desk, replacing the old caretaker from before. She smiled politely as I entered, but when I mentioned the chair, her smile vanished. "You're not thinking of touching it, are you?" she asked quietly. Her voice had a tremor, like she knew something I didn't. I just want to look, I said, trying to sound casual. She hesitated before replying. That thing, it's not a display anymore. It's a warning. People have died. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Last year, some kid dared his friend to sit on it. He was gone in a week. Heart failure. Perfectly healthy kid. Her words sank into me like ice. Every story I'd heard about Thomas Grail, about the curse, suddenly felt more real. But I couldn't stop myself. I walked to the back hall where the chair waited. The air grew colder as I approached. There it was, standing under the dim lights, looking ordinary and wrong all at once. The wood was darker than I remembered, almost black. I stared at it, and for a moment I swear I saw the shadow of a man sitting there. A gaunt figure, with a rope mark burned into his neck. I blinked, and it was gone. But I felt something else. A pull, like the chair was calling me closer. I took a step forward, then another. I reached out my hand. The moment my fingers hovered above the surface, the air grew heavy, as if the room itself was holding its breath. My skin prickled. "Don't," a voice said sharply behind me. I spun around. Mr. Harris was standing there, his face pale. He looked older, weaker, like the chair had taken something from him, too. "Do you know what you're doing?" he hissed. "That thing doesn't want to be touched. It doesn't want to be ignored either. It wants to choose." "Choose?" I asked, my voice shaking. He nodded slowly. "Every few years, someone gets too close, starts dreaming of it, starts hearing it. It's like it reaches out, grabs hold of you, and won't let go until you're gone." A chill ran down my spine. "Why keep it here? Why not destroy it?" Harris laughed bitterly. "Destroy it? We've tried. They burned it once, you know, back in the 1920s. Guess what happened? The barn burned down, and the chair was still there. Not a single burn mark on it. It's older than this town. Maybe older than all of us." The weight of his words pressed down on me. For a moment I felt the urge to run, to leave the museum and never come back. But the whispers in my head wouldn't stop. That night, I tried something different. I recorded myself sleeping. I set up a small camera just to prove to myself that it was all in my mind. When I watched the footage the next morning, I froze. Around 3 a.m., my bedroom door creaked open. The chair wasn't in the frame, but the shadow was. It moved across the wall, like something crawling, slow, deliberate. And then I heard it. The voice. Not just in my dreams, on the recording. Soon, I shut off the video and just sat there, shaking. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The chair wasn't just cursed, it was coming for me. I called Mr. Harris that afternoon. "I have to see it again," I said. "Alone." There was silence on the other end. Finally, he sighed. "Then it's already too late for you." I went back to the museum that evening, just before closing. The halls were quiet. The lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the floor. There it was. The chair. I stood in front of it, my hands trembling. For a moment, I thought I saw the outline of Thomas Grail himself standing behind it. A faint, ghostly figure. His lips moved, but no sound came out. And then, I felt the weight of something heavy on my shoulders, as if invisible hands were pressing me down. "Sit." The word wasn't spoken aloud, but I heard it clearly inside my head. "Sit, or I will come to you." I backed away, heart pounding. But the pull was stronger now. I knew I was being given a choice. That night, I made a decision. I was going to end this, once and for all. I would confront the chair, I would sit on it, and I would see if Thomas Grail's curse was real. But deep down, I already knew the answer. The decision settled in my chest like a stone. Once I made up my mind, there was no turning back. I couldn't live with the whispers anymore. I couldn't wake up night after night feeling those unseen eyes on me. The chair wanted me, and I would face it. The next day I didn't go to work. I couldn't focus on anything except the image of the chair in that shadowy corner of the Thoxen Museum. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Thomas Grail's face. Thin, hollow, his lips curled into that knowing smile. The voice in my dreams grew stronger. It no longer called softly. Now, it commanded. Sit, sit, sit. By noon, I started seeing things while awake. The reflection in the mirror wasn't mine. It was older, gaunt, with deep black eyes. The chair's outline seemed burned into my vision. I had to go back. When I arrived at the museum, the front desk girl looked at me with something close to pity. "You've been coming every day," she said softly. "You need to stop. That thing, it isn't safe. No one who gets too close stays the same." Her voice trembled, and for a brief moment I saw fear in her eyes, as if she'd seen the same things I had. "I'm not here to look," I said. "I'm here to end it." Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but no words came. She just stepped aside, her face pale. I walked past her without another glance. The chair stood waiting, as though it knew I would come. The lights above flickered when I entered the hall, and the air smelled faintly of burnt wood and iron. Every step I took echoed too loudly, as if the walls themselves were listening. I stopped a few feet away. My breath caught. Something about it felt different. The wood looked darker, almost wet, as if it had just been soaked in. Something I didn't want to imagine. The carvings on its backrest seemed deeper, sharper. The faint letters of my name. They were back. I stared at the letters. They weren't scratches anymore. They were etched deep into the wood, carved with purpose. I whispered my own name under my breath, and the chair seemed to creak in response, like it was acknowledging me. Suddenly I felt a presence behind me. I turned, but the hall was empty. The shadows, however, felt heavier. And then I heard footsteps. "Don't do it," Mr. Harris said, appearing from the corner. His face looked more worn than ever. "I warned you. If you sit on it, it won't let you go. Not alive." "I have to," I told him. "It's already inside my head. I can't sleep. I can't live like this." He shook his head, his lips trembling. "You don't understand. The curse isn't just about death. It's about becoming part of it. Everyone who sits there, a piece of them stays behind. That's why it whispers. That's why it calls names. It's hungry." His words sent a chill through me, but I didn't back away. Instead, I stepped closer. The chair almost seemed to lean toward me, like a predator crouching low before striking. "Tell me how it works," I said. "If I sit, what happens?" Mr. Harris closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, they glistened with tears. "The last person who tried, it was my brother. He sat on it to prove the curse was fake. He died 3 days later. His heart just stopped. He was 32, healthy. He laughed about it when he sat there. But afterward, he wasn't the same. He said he saw things. He said he felt someone's hands around his throat even when he was alone." My skin prickled, but it wasn't enough to stop me. That night, I prepared. I went home, sat in my darkened living room, and tried to calm my mind. The whispers didn't stop. Sit, sit, sit. I packed a few things, just in case. My phone, a small voice recorder. If I didn't make it, I wanted someone to know what happened. The walk to the museum felt unreal. Every streetlight flickered as I passed. Every shadow seemed to stretch too far, too close. I could swear I saw a figure following me from across the street, a tall, thin shape that never moved quite like a person should. When I reached the museum, the doors were locked, but I knew where Mr. Harris kept the spare key. I slipped inside, the building eerily silent. The hall was darker than usual, the lights dimmed or burned out, but I didn't need to see. I knew exactly where the chair was. It waited for me like a living thing. I turned on the recorder and placed it in my pocket. My breathing was loud in the quiet room. "This is it," I whispered. I'm going to sit. If anyone finds this recording, know that it wasn't a joke. It's real. The curse is real. I stepped forward, my knees shaking. The chair seemed to hum with energy, as if it had been waiting for this moment. I reached out, my fingers brushing the wood. It was warm. Too warm. Like the surface of living skin. I froze. Somewhere, far off, I heard what sounded like laughter. A man's laughter. Harsh. Cold. "Thomas Grail," I whispered. The laughter grew louder. I lowered myself onto the seat. The wood creaked under my weight, but it didn't feel like wood. It felt soft, like I was sinking into something that wanted to swallow me whole. For a moment, nothing happened. I almost laughed, thinking it was all a lie. Then the air turned icy cold. My vision blurred, and I felt hands, rough, unseen hands, clamp around my throat. I couldn't breathe. My body jerked, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. And through it all, I heard his voice. "Now you belong to me." Everything went black. When I woke up, I was on the floor. The chair stood silently above me as if nothing had happened. But something inside me felt wrong. My skin burned where I touched it. My heart skipped beats, too fast, too slow, like it was confused. And I could still hear him whispering. 3 days, 3 days. I knew then. The curse had begun. I had 3 days left. The first night after I sat in the chair, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it. A heavy, suffocating presence at the foot of my bed. Breathing. Watching. Waiting. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing but shadows. But the feeling never left. By morning, I looked like I hadn't slept in weeks. My reflection in the bathroom mirror startled me. My skin was pale, my eyes sunken, and for a split second I thought I saw someone else staring back. Not me. Him. Thomas Grail. The first sign of the curse appeared that afternoon. I was drinking coffee, trying to keep myself awake, when I felt a sharp pain in my chest. It was sudden, violent, like invisible hands were squeezing my heart. I dropped the cup. Hot coffee spilled across the table. I gasped for air, clawing at my shirt, convinced I was about to die right there. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The pain vanished. But the fear remained. I remembered what Mr. Harris had told me. His brother had died 3 days after sitting in the chair. 3 days, I whispered, my voice trembling. I had less than 72 hours left. That night I tried to record myself again. If the chair, or whatever haunted it, was coming for me, I wanted proof. I set my camera on the dresser, pointing it toward my bed. Then I tried to sleep, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I drifted in and out of strange visions. I saw the chair in the corner of my room, though I knew it was still at the museum. Its shadow stretched across the floor, growing longer and darker until it touched the foot of my bed. Then I heard it. The whisper. Soon. I woke with a start, my heart racing. The room was silent, but I could still feel the whisper echoing in my bones. When I checked the recording the next morning, my blood ran cold. Around 3:12 a.m., the video showed something impossible. The chair was there. Right there, at the foot of my bed. Its dark frame silhouetted against the faint light from the hallway. I rewound it again and again. Each time, the image stayed the same. The chair, watching me. And then, just before the video ended, I saw movement. A figure, thin, pale, hanging from an invisible rope. Thomas Grail. I slammed my laptop shut. My hands were shaking too badly to keep watching. I needed help. I called Mr. Harris. He didn't sound surprised when I told him what I'd done. In fact, his voice was almost resigned. "You sat in it," he said quietly. "Didn't you?" "Yes," I whispered. "And now I think I'm going to die." There was a long silence. Then he said, "Meet me tonight, after the museum closes. There may still be a way." I didn't argue. I just nodded, even though he couldn't see me. The rest of the day felt unreal. Every sound was too sharp, every shadow too deep. Once, I swore I saw someone standing across the street, thin, with a noose mark on his neck. When I blinked, he was gone. By the time I reached the museum, the sky had turned a bruised purple. The building looked darker than usual, almost as if the night itself was leaning closer. Mr. Harris was waiting by the door, his face pale and drawn. "Follow me," he said without a greeting. We walked through the quiet halls until we reached the chair. It sat there, silent, but I could feel its attention on me, like it was alive. "You've tied yourself to it," Harris said, not looking at me, "and now it's feeding on you. That's how it works. Every life it claims makes it stronger." "Then how do I break it?" I asked it, my voice shaking. He hesitated before answering. "There's an old story about an offering. Something personal, something that means life. You burn it with the chair at midnight under the new moon, but—" He trailed off, his face tightening. "But what?" "No one's ever succeeded," he said. "The chair doesn't burn. It doesn't want to let go. And if you try, it fights back." I stared at the chair. The dark wood gleamed faintly, as though it had been polished with something wet. It almost looked like blood. "I'll try," I said. "I have to." That night I went home and gathered everything I could. Old letters from my mother, a silver necklace I'd worn since I was a kid, a photograph of the one person I ever loved. I didn't know if it would work, but I was willing to give anything to survive. When midnight came, I was back at the museum. The air inside was colder than the night outside. The chair waited for me. Its shadow stretched long like a hand reaching out. I placed the items around its legs. My hands trembled as I poured lighter fluid across the seat. "Please," I whispered, "let me go." The moment I struck the match, the air shifted. A deep, guttural voice filled the hall. It wasn't a whisper this time. It was a roar. "You are mine." The flame flickered and died. The match burned out between my fingers. I grabbed another one, struck it hard, and tried again, but the fire wouldn't catch. The wood refused to burn. And then I saw him. Thomas Grail. He stood behind the chair, his body swaying slightly as if still hanging from that rope. His eyes were black pits, and his grin was wider than any human mouth should be. "You can't fight it," he said, though his lips never moved. "You'll sit forever. With me." I stumbled back, my heart pounding, but my legs wouldn't move fast enough. The chair. It was dragging me closer. Not physically, but with something stronger. The voice inside my head grew louder. "Sit, sit, sit." I dropped the matchbox and ran. Through the halls, through the cold, empty night. I didn't stop running until I was home, but I know I can't escape. The whisper followed me. Even now, as I write this, I can hear it behind me. 3 days. I only have 2 left now. The second night was worse, much worse. I couldn't escape the sound of the whisper. It wasn't just in my head anymore. It was in the walls, in the floorboards, in the air I breathed, everywhere. By midnight, my apartment felt colder than the winter outside. I checked the thermostat. It read 72 degrees, but I could see my own breath in the dark. I tried to distract myself. I turned on the TV, hoping the sound would drown out whatever was haunting me, but every channel was static, a low hiss that seemed to shape itself into words. Sit. Again. Sit. I slammed the remote down and unplugged the television, but the whisper continued, growing stronger, almost gleeful. That's when I saw it, a shadow in the hallway. It wasn't mine. The shape was thin, tall, and wrong. It moved without sound, gliding closer with every flicker of the streetlight outside. I grabbed my phone, desperate to capture something, anything, that could prove I wasn't losing my mind. But when I opened the camera, the screen glitched. The image stuttered and twisted like the lens didn't want to look. And then the shadow was gone. Just gone. I stood there shaking, my phone slipping from my hands, clattering to the floor. I didn't even pick it up. I knew I had to go back to the museum, back to the chair. Mr. Harris had said it himself. There was no escaping it once you'd sat down. I barely remember the drive. The streets were empty, and every stoplight seemed to turn red just for me. It felt like the entire city had gone silent, waiting for me to make my next mistake. When I reached the museum, the place was locked and dark. But I knew how to get in. The side door. Harris had shown me the trick to the lock. The halls were worse at night. Every step echoed like a gunshot. The exhibits loomed out of the dark, their glass cases reflecting just enough light to make me feel watched. And then, I reached the chair. It was waiting. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like the chair knew I was coming. The air around it was heavier, colder. The wood almost glistened as if it were wet. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped closer. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't even want to look at it. But my body wanted to sit. The whisper returned, louder now, clearer. Sit, sit, and it will all end. I reached out and touched the armrest. It was freezing cold, like metal left in the snow. The moment my fingers brushed the wood, images flooded my mind. I saw Thomas Grail, hanging from the beam, swinging slightly, his eyes meeting mine even though it was just a vision. And then I saw dozens of others, men, women, even children, all of them dying. I staggered back, gasping, but the images didn't fade. They burned in my mind like scars. 3 days, I whispered to myself. 2 now. I can't let this happen, I can't. I tried the ritual again. This time I brought candles and salt, just like Harris had suggested. Salt draws a barrier, he'd told me. It's the only thing the dead hate more than fire. I made a circle of salt around the chair. The candles flickered and hissed, their flames unnaturally low. Let go, I whispered. Let me go. At first, nothing happened. And then, the air shifted. The candles went out. Every single one. And from the darkness I heard a voice. Not a whisper. A voice. You can't leave? I froze. The words didn't come from behind me or in front of me. They came from everywhere. And then I saw him. Thomas Grail. He stood on the other side of the salt circle, his neck bent unnaturally, the rope still digging into his skin. But his grin was almost human. Why me? I asked. Why do you want me? His grin widened. Because you sat. And now you belong. I backed up, stumbling over the edge of the circle. My foot smeared the line of salt. The barrier was broken, and the moment it broke, the temperature dropped even lower. I felt something cold wrap around my wrist. I looked down. There was nothing there, but the grip tightened. I screamed and ripped myself free, though my skin burned like it had been frostbitten. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping in the night air. When I looked at my wrist under the streetlight, my heart stopped. There were bruises, dark, finger-shaped bruises, but no one had touched me. Back home, I locked every door and window, but I knew it wouldn't matter. The curse wasn't outside. It was in me now. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat on the floor with every light on, clutching a kitchen knife like it could save me. And that's when I noticed something, the chair. It was in my apartment. I don't know how. I don't know when. But there it was, sitting in the corner. The same cracks, the same dark wood, the same whisper, louder than ever. Sit. I threw the knife at it. It clanged against the floor, useless. The chair didn't move, but I could feel it smiling. If wood could smile, it was smiling at me. I covered it with a blanket, but the shape underneath was still unmistakable. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself I was hallucinating. But then I heard the creak, the sound of someone sitting down. The blanket shifted, just slightly, as if something invisible had lowered itself into the seat, and then I heard the voice right next to my ear. "I'm waiting." The second night was over, and I knew the third would be my last. I woke up on the floor. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. The lights were still on. The knife was still where I dropped it. And the chair was still in the corner, uncovered. My heart sank. I know I covered it. I know I did. But the blanket was folded neatly on the floor beside it, as if someone, or something, had taken it off. The whisper was gone now, and somehow that was worse. It was the third day, the final day. Mr. Harris had said that no one lasted past the third. 3 days, he told me. Then the chair claims you. I couldn't sit still. Every creak of the apartment, every shadow, made my skin crawl. It felt like something was watching me, waiting. I tried to leave. I grabbed my car keys and ran to the door. But the moment I touched the handle, the apartment shook. Not like an earthquake, more like something alive was holding me in place. I stepped back, terrified, and that's when I saw the writing. On the wall above the chair, faint but clear, were 3 words scratched deep into the paint. Sit or die. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn it, smash it, anything to get rid of it. But deep inside, I knew the chair wasn't just a thing. It was alive, and it wouldn't be destroyed so easily. I called Harris. It was early morning, but I didn't care. He answered on the third ring, his voice hoarse. "You're calling about the chair," he said. Not a question. A statement. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "It's in my apartment. God, it's here. I didn't bring it, but it's here." Harris went silent for a long moment. Then he said, "It's claimed you. Once it follows you, you're running out of time. There's only one thing you can do." "What?" I begged. "Tell me what to do." "Go back to the museum," he said. "Before sunset, bring the chair. You have to put it back where it belongs, in the original spot, and you have to make an offering." "An offering?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Blood. It wants blood. Yours or someone else's. That's the only way it's ever satisfied." I nearly dropped the phone. "You want me to hurt someone?" "I want you to survive," Harris said grimly. "You have less than 12 hours. Do nothing, and the chair will kill you." I wanted to tell him he was insane, but deep down I knew he was right. The chair had already taken control. I could feel it, like a shadow creeping into my mind. I wrapped my hands around the chair's armrests, ready to drag it outside. The wood burned my skin with cold, but I pulled, grunting, sweating, until it finally scraped across the floor. It felt heavier than before, almost like it didn't want to move. I hauled it down the stairs, one step at a time. By the time I reached the street, my arms were trembling. Every few seconds, I thought I heard footsteps behind me, but when I turned, the street was empty. I shoved it into the back of my car. The moment it hit the trunk, I swear, I heard a low laugh. Not loud, but just enough to make my blood run cold. The drive to the museum felt like a nightmare. Every traffic light turned red. Every other car seemed to slow down just to block me. It felt like the city itself wanted me to fail. By the time I arrived, the sky was turning orange. Sunset was coming. Fast. Harris was waiting by the entrance. He looked pale, his hands trembling. "You brought it," he said. "Good. Bring it inside. Quickly." Together we carried it into the museum. Back to that cursed display room. The air grew colder with every step, and I could feel the tension in Harris's grip. "Put it there," he said, pointing to a faded square on the floor. "The original spot. Don't miss it." We lowered it into place. The moment it touched the floor, I felt a ripple in the air, like the room had sighed in relief. "Now the offering," Harris said. He handed me a knife. "Cut your palm. Just enough to let it taste you." I stared at him, horrified. But his eyes told me he wasn't joking. With shaking hands, I pressed the blade to my palm. The sting was sharp, hot. Blood welled up, dripping onto the wood. The chair seemed to drink it in. The dark stains vanished as soon as they touched it. And then the whispers stopped. For the first time in days, it stopped. But the relief was brief, because the lights above us began to flicker. And from the far end of the room, I saw movement. Thomas Grail, or what was left of him. He stepped out of the shadows, his face pale and grinning. "You think this is enough?" he hissed. "You think blood is all it wants?" Harris stepped forward, holding a bag of salt. "Stay back," he warned. "I know what you are. I know how to keep you." Before he could finish, Harris was lifted off the ground. Invisible hands slammed him against the wall. He let out a choked scream. I froze. I didn't know what to do. "Sit," Grail whispered. "Sit, and I'll let you live." The chair creaked, inviting me. Like it was alive, like it was hungry. I backed away. "No," I said, "I'm not giving you anything else." Grail laughed, a sound that chilled me to my bones. "Then I'll take it." The lights shattered. Glass rained down on the floor. The entire room went dark except for the faint glow coming from the chair. Something grabbed my ankle. I screamed, kicking, but nothing was there. The grip tightened, pulling me toward the chair. I clawed at the floor, my fingernails scraping on the wood. "Let me go!" I shouted. But the harder I fought, the stronger it pulled. Harris, still pinned against the wall, yelled, "Destroy it! Break the chair! It's your only chance!" I scrambled to my feet, grabbed the knife, and swung at the chair's armrest. The blade snapped in half. The wood didn't even splinter. "Nothing breaks it," Grail said, his grin impossibly wide. "Not until it's fed." The pull grew stronger. I stumbled, falling into the chair. The moment I touched the seat, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the museum anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere cold and endless. And Grail was standing over me, smiling. Darkness. It swallowed me whole. I couldn't feel my body. I couldn't hear anything except my own breath. And even that felt wrong. When my eyes adjusted, I realized I was no longer in the museum. The world around me looked like a twisted reflection of it. The walls were cracked, blackened, and wet as if soaked in old blood. The air was heavy like breathing through water. And there he was. Thomas Grail, standing just a few steps away, his grin stretching far too wide, his teeth black like rotting wood. "Welcome," he whispered. "Welcome to my chair." I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. Behind me was nothing but a void, an endless, swirling blackness. No doors, no windows, no escape. "Where am I?" I stammered. My voice sounded tiny, like it belonged to someone else. "You're inside it," Grail said, tilting his head. "Inside the curse. Everyone who sits becomes part of it. Some stay forever." I shook my head. "No, I'm not staying here. I'll find a way out." His smile widened even further. "No one ever finds a way out. Not unless they make a deal." The ground beneath me shifted like liquid. I stumbled, my hands landing on something wet and sticky. When I looked down, I almost screamed. The floor wasn't just black, it was covered in faces. Dozens of pale, lifeless faces, eyes wide, mouths frozen in silent screams. They stared at me, following my every movement. I could feel them whispering without sound, their pain seeping into my mind. Grail stepped closer. "These are the ones who sat before you," he said softly. "Soldiers, drunks, curious fools. They all thought they could resist, but in the end, they gave me what I wanted." I swallowed hard. "What do you want?" His grin softened into something more dangerous. "I want your life," he said simply. "Your soul. Every drop of fear you can give me." I turned and ran. I don't know why I thought running would help, but instinct took over. The black void behind me turned into a long hallway, endless and shifting. Doors appeared on both sides, each one different. Old wooden doors, iron gates, some with broken windows. Whispers came from behind each one. Some sounded like laughter, others like cries for help. I passed one door and something slammed into it from the other side. The entire wall shook. A woman's voice screamed my name. "Help me! Help me!" I froze. I didn't know her voice, but it sounded real. Then the whisper came again, Grail's voice, right in my ear. "Open it. See what's waiting for you." I almost did. My hand was on the doorknob, but something deep inside me told me not to. I yanked my hand back and ran. The hallway twisted and suddenly dropped. I tumbled down a flight of stairs that hadn't been there seconds ago. When I landed, I was back in the museum room, but not the real one. Everything was warped. The display cases were shattered. The walls were covered in claw marks, and in the center of it all was the chair. It looked alive. The wood pulsed like skin. The seat was stained dark, and it dripped something thick and black onto the floor. "Sit," Grail said behind me. "Sit, and I'll let you go. For now." I turned to face him, shaking my head. "No, I won't play your game." He laughed, a sound so loud it made the walls vibrate. "Then you'll join them," he hissed, pointing to the shadows. I looked where he pointed and froze. From the darkness, the faces emerged, the souls of the cursed. They crawled toward me, their hands reaching, their mouths open in silent screams. I stumbled back, searching for anything, a weapon, a door, anything. And then I saw it. A crack. A faint, glowing crack in the floor beneath the chair. It pulsed with light, warm and golden, unlike anything else in this hellish place. "Don't even think about it," Grail growled. "That is not for you." But I didn't listen. I lunged for it. The souls grabbed at my legs, tearing at my skin, but I kicked and fought my way forward. Every step felt like walking through fire. I reached the crack and slammed my fist into it. Pain shot through my hand, but the crack widened. Light burst out, blinding me. Grail screamed. "No! Stop! You don't know what you're doing!" The ground shook. The walls split open. The faces of the cursed began to vanish, their screams turning into something softer, almost like sighs of relief. I kept hitting the crack again and again until it shattered completely. And then everything collapsed. The world around me crumbled like broken glass. I felt myself falling, weightless, through the void. I woke up with a scream. I was in the museum. The real one. The chair was still there, but it looked normal again. Old, dusty, lifeless. Harris was on the floor, breathing hard, his face pale. You came back," he said, voice trembling. "I thought you were gone." I looked at my hands. They were bleeding, but I was alive. "The chair," I whispered. "It's done. It's over." But Harris shook his head. "No, it's never over. You broke into its world, but that doesn't destroy it. It just waits for the next one." I stared at the chair, and for a split second, I thought I saw it. A flicker. A twitch. As if it was smiling at me. I didn't sleep that night. Even after everything, I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I blinked, I saw it. The chair. It wasn't just a piece of wood anymore. It was something breathing. Something waiting. Harris sat across from me in his small office at the museum. The place was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that made you nervous to breathe. "You saw what's inside," Harris said finally. His voice was calm, but I could tell his hands were shaking. "Not many ever come back from that." I nodded slowly. "I don't think I came back the same," I said. "There's something wrong with me now." Harris didn't deny it. "You've been marked. Once the chair chooses you, it leaves a stain. Sometimes it's just nightmares. Sometimes worse." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. Nightmares? I don't think I'm even awake right now. I keep hearing things. Voices. "What kind of voices?" Harris asked. I looked at him. "Children. Laughing. Whispering my name." Harris froze. Then he whispered, "It's starting already." Before I could ask what he meant, the lights above us flickered. The hum of the fluorescent bulbs grew louder, like a swarm of insects. And then, I heard it. Creak. The sound of wood shifting. The sound of the chair moving. "It can't be," Harris muttered, standing. He rushed out into the hallway, and I followed. When we reached the display room, I stopped dead. The chair was not where we left it. It was in the middle of the room, turned slightly, facing us. "I locked this room," Harris said. "No one's been in here. No one." I took a step forward. The air around the chair was colder than the rest of the room. And then, it creaked again. By itself. Like someone had just sat down. Harris grabbed my arm. "Don't go closer. That's what it wants. It's pulling you back in." "What do we do?" I whispered. He looked at me with tired, haunted eyes. "There's one way to end it, but it's not something I can ask of you." "What way?" "To seal it," he said quietly. "You have to give it something it wants more than you. A life. Blood. It's always about blood." I shook my head. "I'm not killing someone just to—" The lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. And in that silence, I heard it. The chair, laughing. It started low, like wood groaning, but then it rose. Clear, sharp laughter. Like Thomas Grail himself was sitting right there. "You can't run," the voice whispered. "Not anymore." A sharp pain shot through my palm, the one I'd cut before. I lifted it and saw blood. Fresh blood. Dripping. The cut had reopened. The chair was feeding again, taking what it wanted. "No," I whispered. "Not again. I won't let it." I grabbed one of the display ropes and swung it like a weapon. Not that I thought it would do anything, but I had to fight. "Stop!" Harris shouted. "Don't touch it! Every time you fight it, you give it more power." I didn't care. I rushed the chair and slammed the rope down. The room exploded with sound. Whispers, screams, laughter, all at once. I fell back, covering my ears, but the voices were inside my head. "You're mine," Grail's voice said. "Even if you run, I'll find you. Even if you burn me, I'll rise again." And then I saw them. The faces. The same faces I'd seen inside the curse, pressing against the air like it was glass, their mouths opening and closing. "Get out!" Harris yelled, pulling me toward the door. "Now!" I stumbled, barely able to move. The air felt like tar. But somehow we made it out of the room. Harris slammed the door shut and locked it. Then he turned to me, panting. "You don't come back here. Ever. Do you understand? The more you see it, the closer it gets to owning you completely." I looked at him. "Then what happens to you? You're still here with it." He gave a weak smile. "I've made my peace. I've been guarding that thing for decades. Maybe my time is coming." I shook my head. "There has to be another way. We can destroy it." He sighed. "You don't destroy things like this. You survive them. If you're lucky." That night, I packed my things. I left my apartment. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. But no matter how far I drive, no matter how many miles I put between me and that cursed museum, I still hear it. The creak, the whisper. Last night, I woke up at 3 a.m. There, in the corner of my motel room, was a shape. Tall, wooden. The chair. I blinked, and it was gone. But I know it's coming. I didn't think the chair would follow me, but I was wrong. Every night since I left the museum, I've felt it. Watching. Waiting. At first, it was just the creaks in the motel hallway, a sound like footsteps on old wood. But then, I started seeing its shadow. Sometimes in the corner of the room. Sometimes in the reflection of the bathroom mirror. The shape of its backrest. The outline of its cursed legs. And last night I woke up with the sound of someone whispering my name. Soft? Close? Like their lips were almost touching my ear. I turned over, heart pounding, and there it was. The chair. It stood by the bed, silent but alive, the wood glistening as if covered in sweat. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the air was thicker, heavier, like being buried alive. I left the motel that night. No sleep, no destination. I just drove. The highway was empty, but every time I checked my rearview mirror, I saw it. The chair. Not literally, but I felt it there. Like a shadow on the edge of my vision. That's when I realized something terrible. This thing wasn't tied to the museum. It was tied to me. I called Harris. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept in days. "You're not going to like what I tell you," he said. "Try me," he sighed. "The chair doesn't just curse you when you sit in it. It chooses you. Once you're chosen, it feeds until there's nothing left of you." "Then how do I stop it?" "You can't. Not unless you give it what it wants." There was silence on the line. I knew what he meant. I'd heard it before. "Blood," I whispered. "It wants blood." "Yes," Harris said. "Not yours. Someone else's. That's how it was made. That's how it stays alive." I wanted to hang up. I wanted to forget. But I couldn't. The creaks in the motel, the whispers, they were inside me now. I decided to end it, one way or another. I drove back to the museum. It was closed, dark, abandoned-looking, but Harris was there, waiting. "You came back," he said, shaking his head. "I was hoping you wouldn't." "I don't have a choice," I told him. "It's following me. If I don't end this, it'll kill me." He nodded slowly. "Then this is the last night." We went into the display room. The chair sat in its case, still and silent, but I could feel its eyes on me. Yes, eyes. I swear it has them now, carved into the wood like dark pits, watching every breath I take. "You know what you have to do," Harris said. I did, but I wasn't going to hurt anyone else. If the chair wanted a life, it could take mine. I walked up to it, slowly. Every creak of the floor sounded like a scream. The closer I got, the colder the air became. I could see my breath like it was winter inside the room. I reached out and touched the wood. It was warm, too warm, like touching skin. "Thomas Grail," I whispered. "I'm here. Take me." The room went black. When I opened my eyes, I was back inside its world, the endless hallway, the faces in the walls, the void behind me. But this time Grail wasn't smiling. He looked hungry. "You came willingly," he said. "How generous of you. How foolish." I stood tall. "If it ends with me, fine, but you're not taking anyone else." His grin widened again. "You think you can bargain with me? This is my world. You're already mine." The ground beneath me cracked open. Hands clawed out, grabbing my ankles. They were cold, icy, and strong. I couldn't move. "Join them," Grail hissed. "Sit, and you'll stay forever." The chair appeared behind him. It looked even worse, now, dripping black sludge, its legs twisted like bones. I took a deep breath. Then I did something he didn't expect. I ran toward the chair, not away, not to sit, but to destroy it. I grabbed the chair by its backrest and lifted with everything I had. It felt like lifting a corpse, heavy, dead weight, but alive somehow. Grail screamed, "No! Stop! You can't!" I slammed the chair into the ground. Once, twice. The wood cracked. A high-pitched wail echoed through the air, like thousands of voices screaming at once. The faces in the walls began to melt away. One by one, they disappeared, whispering "thank you" as they faded. Grail lunged at me, but his form flickered like smoke. "You'll regret this," he screamed. "You'll die with me." I brought the chair down one final time. It shattered into pieces. The world around me exploded with light. I woke up on the museum floor. Harris was standing over me, eyes wide. You did it," he said. "It's gone." I looked around. The chair was nothing but splinters. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. But Harris didn't look relieved. He looked terrified. "What is it?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "When you destroy something like this, the curse doesn't end. It just finds a new shape." That night, I left the museum and didn't look back. But sometimes, I hear creaks. Not like footsteps, like wood. And when I check the corner of the room, sometimes I think I see it. Not a chair. Something else. Something worse. Maybe Grail isn't gone. Maybe he's just waiting. And maybe, one day, I'll hear that whisper again.